And there we are.
Awesome.
Hello. We're live for a moment, so bear with me while I share it to the Facebook group.
Okay.
I open up Facebook and I see a perfect thing to talk to you about. Seems like you met a very cool person today.
I did, yes. It was on my
Uh,
bucket list of stuff to do, so I was very happy.
all right, just give it a moment, and while it shares to the actual books of horror, and then we'll be off to the races. All right, yep, we're good. Like I said, I'll try and keep track of our comments as well. So, hello everyone. Welcome to a brand new live on June 22nd. I got the cat fighting me over here to get on my lap.
I got mine too. Look at so
Perfect.
it'll be cat time.
So glad to have you on, Dorian. Um, if you will, please introduce yourself and tell everyone who you are and what you're all about.
All right. So I am Dorian J. Sinnott, an author of dark fiction. So not super horror, more in the dark realm, but it touches on horror. I do a lot of short fiction, but I also write longer works. I have two novels out, and sometimes I dabble in poetry, but that stuff's not horror. So, and I like metal music and traveling and cats. That's basically me.
What has been the your most favorite place you've traveled to? It could be anywhere in the world.
Oh my gosh.
Some
Probably I'll
somewhere
go with
you're
two of them. I'll do one in the states and one outside the states. So I think my favorite place I've traveled to not here is in Poland. I went to Krakow. I
at
don't hope I'm saying it right, but that city was
the
gorgeous.
concentration camp.
We
Well,
went
that
there. Yeah, but the city itself was like it was so
city.
pretty. Yeah. And probably here I would say out in Oregon. I like Oregon and like the Willamette Valley area, like away from people.
So like Pacific Northwest,
Yeah.
you get all that. That's a whole different ecosystem compared to over here on the East Coast.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
All right. So I said I had a surprise real quick.
Mhm.
I'll try. Hopefully the camera will pick it up, but um, I just had to wear it for you and I
Awesome.
because we are, as far as I know, you and I are like the only Rams fans that are in the horror community.
Yeah, I was
So,
gonna say you're the only one I've found. So yeah.
um, but I got I hedge my bets. Everybody picks on me like we got a small football chat that me and other people in the community have, and they all pick on me because I have four teams I root for. So they're like, of course you're gonna win this game. You bet on everybody. So but the Rams have been my number one ride or die for as long as I've been following football, and that would have been in the early aughts. But I like bird teams as well. So like Ravens, Eagles, and Seahawks.
I'll say when I'm
But
not rooting for the Rams, my brother's a Jets fan, so I gotta root for them, even though they're not that great. And my girlfriend is a Chiefs fan, so
oof,
yeah.
just
But I think she's also the 49ers because she's originally from Sacramento. So I was like, all right. But it's usually the Rams and the Jets.
that'll make Eric Butler at least a little bit happy.
Yeah.
Another 49ers fan. He kind of looks down on all the others, like he's the only true fan. And it's funny, but you got other people in the community that are 49ers fans, and he's like, they're not real fans. It's funny. But hey, you get two Rams fans together, they're like, hey, you do?
Exactly.
um, all right. So for my first question, I like to ask on these lives, it's what got you started on your writing journey?
Oh my gosh. I said it's silly, but probably back in kindergarten. We used to do this is like I think what got me into like wanting to write and like tell stories was every Friday my teacher used to have us do it was like story hour and we would
Yeah,
spend like all morning with like little index cards like drawing pictures and like writing stories and over lunch she would take them and laminate them and like staple them together and then we would all read our stories to each other like in the afternoon.
yeah,
So I don't know, I think it was just having like the little laminated index cards like as a little book was so cool and just having people like listen to the stories you were telling and I was like this is a lot of fun. So I
yeah.
don't know. I
That
think that's what like got me into like wanting to write and tell stories was just that, which is
that is actually
weird,
really
but
cool. Yeah, like that's I mean that's at a very at a very impressionable age. So getting kids to want to write
yeah.
right from the beginning, like that's very cool.
Mhm.
I know a few other people that have like through school. My school never, as far as I remember, they never did anything like that to support uh, kids actually getting into writing. They did a lot for reading, but not writing. And I know a couple of people have said that they had teachers and stuff that when they had their stories wrote, they would get them bound and stuff into an actual book. So
Yep.
yep, so that's really cool. Um, so that would been maybe the seed. When did you start publishing your works? I
So
know you've
that
been at this a long time.
yeah, this is probably when I started taking it seriously. Um, which was also when I was young. The first thing I ever had published, I was actually 12. It was a poem, so it wasn't like anything major. But my English teacher at the time, we were doing like a creative writing because we used to have creative writing. I think Fridays was like our creative writing day. Cat is jumping around. I'm sorry.
Yeah, mine's on my lap.
And I had written a poem for class, and she had pulled me aside after class and she had done work in publishing before with like literary magazine and like back then I hate saying back then because it makes me feel like I'm ancient, but things were so different. Like now it's so easy with like submittable and email submissions, and like back then you had to print everything out and snail mail it and it took forever to hear anything. But she like walked me through everything and she threatened to fail me if I didn't submit my work to this for publication. And she basically like helped me do my query letter and all this stuff. And
Yeah,
it got picked up by one of the magazines. So I think after that was when I started taking it seriously because I was like, oh, this is like actually something that's real. It's not, not just the little
yeah,
laminated index cards. Like I actually got like the anthology at the end and it was really exciting. So
yeah. That's really cool.
yep.
Uh, um, goes back to in school, but people that foster that sense of I don't know that instill that writing bug in you and show you the support that can be
Mhm.
there. So that's really cool.
So I was very lucky that a lot of the teachers at my school were very supportive and very into the arts. Like the community at my school was very art centric, so I think it was very
Yeah,
helpful for everybody, like with music, with just art in general, and writing and photography. And they had a lot for like people wanting to go into film, like learning how to like shoot things properly with like film cameras and stuff. So
right.
it was pretty cool.
That is pretty cool. Um, it's a tough, it's a, it's a tough uh major because
Yeah.
anything with fine arts or FMAs or anything like that, because that was my major in high school as well. It was fine arts, but I was more on the music side and didn't get into write. I wrote just a little bit of fiction in high school because I got a typewriter, so I would pound out little flash fiction stories with me and my friends in them. But they were it was more of mostly music. There's a lot of music influence in our school. Did you ever dabble in music yourself? You said you're a heavy metal fan.
Yeah. I did. I played trumpet in band in high school for years, and I played violin not in school because we didn't have orchestra. We just had like regular band. But I learned violin on the side, and that was fun.
Yeah, that's
But
cool too.
yeah,
You still play?
not really. I think
I was gonna
trumpet
say
at
next.
this point, I think I've completely lost how to do.
Yeah,
Violin, I probably could if I picked it up again, but I feel like life is just so busy, and I have so many hobbies. That's my problem, and like trying to prioritize them all. But
I was
yeah,
gonna say bring your violin or bring either instrument to one of the events, and that'll bring in some folks.
yeah,
You know, trumpet. Trumpet might be more difficult to draw people in than a violin, but I think a violin would be sweet. Imagine rolling through a horror book convention or a book convention and somebody's strumming on it or with the
yeah.
bow on a violin, and that's going to draw some folks over for sure. That's fun. But for me, I was a percussionist, which is I don't know, it was fun, and then I learned a little bit for the woodwinds with the flute,
Nice.
but I always thought like string instruments were the prettiest sounding or woodwinds.
Yeah.
So
Then my dad wanted me to learn the flute because he's a huge Jethro Tull fan.
oh
So
yeah,
he was all into like, oh, you should learn the flute. And then it was when we had to try the instruments out, but I was set on the trumpet. So yeah, he
you
was
could
like,
yeah
oh, come on, but yeah,
see Jethro Tull now like if you know the history like I can't remember that guy's name, but he's self-taught.
hmm
Like everything, like when you watch him play the flute up on stage, everything he's doing is self-taught. So
yeah.
it's never too late. I wish I could. That the lead singer
Oh,
and
Ian
Flowers.
Ian Anderson, is that? Yeah,
Yeah, Ian Anderson. Yep,
yeah.
that's him. Yeah, self-taught. I really enjoy Jethro Tull too. So
Yes.
has any music or any of your own experience with music influenced your writing at all?
I think so. I was gonna say a lot of my, if not like directly giving me inspiration, like I need music on like when I'm writing. Like
Yeah.
I can't. It's terrible because I can't write with people around me and with like TV on and stuff. But I also cannot write without music. Um, and I think music inspires me a lot. Like I have playlists for like all of my book projects and everything. That like yeah, instrumental music ones with lyrics and everything. So if not like to kick off an idea, at least to keep me writing. But I feel
Yeah.
like some of my short stories and stuff, a lot of them I think came from like a line in a song. Like if I hear a line in a song, it like kind of just I don't
Oh
know, I
yeah.
see a whole story built around it. So music is a very big influence in my work.
I can absolutely relate, and I think there's a lot of writers out there too that can relate to that exact thing that you said with whether it's a line or something from a song. will absolutely inspire you. Um, from the way it works for me, like I don't listen to anything, and I try not to have the TV on either when I write. So I wax and wane on how I can do things that way, but um, when I'm feeling like I have less of a drive or feeling blocked in a story, then I'll just listen to music for like a couple hours, and it seems like it'll work itself out for
Yeah.
whatever reason. Like I guess it's like especially with music that I already know, like nothing new, but music that I know and love, like it puts me in a sense of calming, and I guess it helps get the gears turning finally. So do you? One thing I do try to write to, I don't know if you enjoy it, is like I will go to like synthwave.
I it depends. I'm not entirely synthwave right. Like I know some people do that. They do like lo-fi and stuff, and
Yeah,
that it almost like it calms me too much that it almost like I want that on when I'm sleeping.
yeah,
But I
yeah.
do a
I can
lot
get
of
that.
like ambient music, like just a few of them
Yeah,
I listen to. It's like Adrian Von Ziegler and Peter Gundry are like the two big ones. Um, but like they have playlists for like dark music, and some of it's like sad piano and violin and stuff. But it's very like mood and ambient setting, and
yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
that's
Sad.
usually what I write to more than the other stuff.
I think Heather Larson, one of her things she's always sharing to me about the ambient music, is the sad violin. So
Yeah,
um, I like to
it
do
puts you in a certain headspace. I will say that
it
it
does.
really does.
I like to get down with like 80s or cyberpunk type synthwave. So think like the soundtracks to Blade Runner, stuff like that.
Yep.
Anything from the 80s is going to have some kind of crazy synth influence in it, like in the soundtrack. So that's what that's what usually helps me. Um, Trying to see if we had any comments. If anybody's watching, drop a comment. Any questions you have for Dorian, please ask them and we'll get to them. I'm trying to keep a watch out for those. All right. So this may be altered to however it fits you best for your writing career, but is there any advice you received that helped you when you first started writing? Or you can apply it to publishing. And is
Well, yeah.
there? And then there's the second part. I'll let you answer that, and then go to the second part.
Okay. I'm trying to think.
Yeah, put
Uh,
you on the spot.
yeah. I might have two of them. One of them I see people go back and forth with. But it has personally worked for me, so I will share it. But it's the whole like write something every day, and I know some people are like that can lead to burnout and everything, and it really comes down to the personal, each
Yeah,
person. But I have at least found if I write something every day, even if it's like a 50-word like drabble or something, like it's better than me not doing anything because I'm kind of just forcing myself to put something down. So that's kind of been my habit for years is I always, even if it's 50 words, even if it's like 20 words, just put something down on a page every day because it keeps me motivated a little more. Um, but I think my my other advice is just for like the publishing side of things, um, especially for people starting out, because it can be a very discouraging industry.
yeah,
And I've done some work on the publishing side. I've worked at literary agencies and stuff in the past, and a lot of the industry, it really just comes down to like personal preference and trying to explain to people that it's not like that your work is bad, because I know a lot of people like if you get like X amount of rejections, it's always like, oh, well, what's wrong with my work? Well, it might not necessarily be that.
right.
Um, And I always tell everybody that like rejection is a I'm trying to think how I want to word it. Rejection is not like failure. I try to explain that to people because I know like nobody likes to get rejections, but basically that a rejection is opportunity because it's just like your piece.
Right.
If it wasn't accepted somewhere, that wasn't the right place for it. And like, I don't know, just like finding positive things within stuff like that. It's hard to explain it. Oh my gosh.
No, I mean, yeah, you're spot on with the rejection thing. It might, like you said, there's a home for whatever you're working on or
Mm-hmm.
whatever you're trying to submit, but um, hopefully, if you do get a rejection, that the people or the person rejecting that piece gives you the feedback that you can go off of and understand why. So
Yes. Yep.
yeah, so that feedback is incredibly important in that process too, because um, like you said, it might be a fantastic piece, but it's just not part of the puzzle that that they were building. So it's part of another puzzle for someone else, and that's where it would fit in perfectly. So
And a
people
lot
have
of
to
times, like
understand it.
I've seen a lot of times too, where like there are people who really do enjoy a piece, but like if they can't properly market it to its full potential, they're not
Yeah,
going to sign with it or, you know, accept it if it's not, if they can't do you like the best that they can, like to do your story, you know, get it to the right people and
yeah,
everything too. So, yeah.
absolutely. I think you kind of answered the second part of that question, which is what would be a separate piece of advice that you received that you would pass on to others. So, like, you kind of gave two valid pieces of advice for up and coming writers or even established writers. Like, even an established writer can benefit from knowing that you've been writing so long. You might expect an acceptance or something, and it might not be just the right home for that piece. So,
Mhm.
um,
And I
that
guess in the other vein of that, which we talk about all the time, like I'm sure everybody in the community is, you know, indie publishing, self-publishing, traditional. They are all valid in all forms of publishing. And
yeah,
at the end of the day, no one is better than the other. It really just comes down to what is best for you. So that's the
that's,
that's my big
that's what,
advice to everybody because I know there's so many people that, you know, they get rejected from traditional publishing and then it's like, well, I have to resort to self-publishing. And it's like, well, if that's not what's for you, then keep trying traditional. Like don't feel like you have to do one or the other because like one is lesser than. Like none of them are lesser than. They're just at the end of the day it comes down to what is best for you and yeah. So because you're going to find your readers regardless.
yeah. I think too, like it used to be very black and white, traditional, and then in
Mm,
came indie publishing,
yep.
and then probably within the last 10 and maybe even more so in the last 5 years, you are starting to see a lot more hybrid published
Yeah.
authors, which do indie and traditional. So
Mhm.
there's always you just have to know how to pivot and
Yep.
know your market for whatever you're trying to get published. So if it might not be a like you said, it might not be a marketable piece for traditional publishing. So then it would be right for indie publishing.
Yep.
But you might have something um, that's completely different that is perfect for to approach for traditional publishing. So
Exactly.
you're just dispensing wisdom and knowledge all over the place right now. But that's what we're here for to talk about. Like this is what this is what the people watching will benefit from this. So that would be a question for I don't know if you touched on it, but are you an indie, traditional, or hybrid?
I I guess I'm a hybrid because I do a lot of most of my all of my short fiction has been picked up through like anthologies and publishers. And my novels thus far, I've just done myself.
Yeah.
So I'm hybrid with like that, but the project I'm working on now, I'm going to attempt either indie or traditional. I'm going to query it out. So
Okay. Yeah. With your poetry, do you publish that a lot, or and when you if you do, how do you go about that with the publishing?
I haven't in the last, I'm going to say like 5 years, I haven't really done a lot of poetry. Um,
Yeah.
and it's sort of the same way. I queried a lot to like poetry publishers.
Yeah.
I ended up releasing like a compilation anthology once like the rights came back to me. But poetry, at least in my opinion, maybe it's just because it's not horror and that's what most people know me for.
Yeah.
But it doesn't sell as well as like other collections I've noticed. But I usually have a few copies and stuff with me because there's some people that like it. But yeah, I found poetry to be a harder sell sometimes, I think, than
That,
other
that
stuff.
maybe not a sell, but that would be a question I have for you is um querying, and also I know it's definitely different. But with like the publication and maybe the marketing and all that, how you find the difference between poetry and prose. Like it's gotta be a whole different skill set, right? Between the two. Whether you're
Yeah.
advertising it or querying it out for publication, or even maybe how you go about, if you did indie publish it yourself, how you would go about um, putting the book together. So
I'm trying to think.
yeah, like I like
I
you
know.
said.
I think
Well,
the
you said it's been a while since you've done it, but it
yeah. I
seems
mean, I
like
think the
a
hardest
whole
thing
different skill set.
I don't really know if it's like the harder. Try to think of how I want to phrase it.
I wouldn't say it's harder, but I would say it's probably very different how you approach it, right?
Yeah, and the thing too with like submitting poetry, at least in my opinion, and with it is poetry to me is a completely different animal than like any other type of writing where it's like I don't want to say that there's more rules in like fiction and like prose and stuff like that. Whereas poetry, I feel like
Right.
there really aren't. Like, and I feel like it's harder to. I don't know. I don't want to say it's harder to judge somebody's poetry because
It's
it's different.
yeah.
It's very different. Um, I don't know, and I feel like putting poetry together. Like I feel like it's I don't know. It's kind of the same as like putting short story stuff together because like I do a lot of like when I do it for my stories, they're all like dark stories or horror, obviously.
Yeah.
But poetry, I feel like everything kind of has to feel the same. Like I don't know. It's very hard to explain it.
I know, I know. This is why I asked it, because it's a mystery to me. I'm admittedly not big into poetry. I have a lot of friends such as yourself and a few others in like Mike Innenbach and a few others that publish poetry, but they also do prose, and the prose is horror centric, where the poetry is basically just a stream of emotions that they're
Yeah.
getting out onto the page.
Yeah, I would say like my poetry is like I said, it's not horror, it's not dark. I really do want to do like a dark poetry collection because I think it would be fun to try and do that. So that's on one of my like eventual to dos. But
Yeah,
yeah, I would say I think my poetry is more emotional. It's more personal. Like it digs deeper.
yeah,
Not to say that some of my prose isn't, because like I do some of the things I write is like grief horror, and that obviously touches a lot on emotion and digging deep and stuff. But I don't know. I feel like poetry, at least the poetry that I write, is very digging more within oneself. I don't know if that, yeah, it's hard. It's hard to explain it.
See, we got Teresa Peachy Beating viewing with us, and she says my service is going in and out, but his tell us about your upcoming project if you haven't already. That's usually at the very end of this, Teresa. So if you miss us talking about that at the end, you can catch this on a rerun. It should be up on Facebook, and I'll share the link on the announcement. And also, I should have this video up on YouTube.
Sweet.
So there you
I
go,
also want to
Teresa.
apologize because it's getting darker, and I know I'm like harder to see
Oh,
now.
you're
Yeah,
bathed in red over there. Like it's just
yeah,
the red light is coming through, and I love it. The dark, the deeper we go, the darker it gets, and the more
yeah.
red. It's all
One
fun.
of the things I have in an old house that, yeah, there's no lights in here, so
All right. So this, yeah, the poetry stuff, it's fascinating, and I find it fascinating because it's not something that I am versed at all in. So I like to pick the brains of the people that do it and see how their thought processes are for it. So
I
it's
will say
very
with poetry though, what the one benefit from it that I will say is I think it has helped my prose because I've at least been told by people that my writing is very poetic in certain ways and like the way that like my sentences flow and like I feel like I have a very and this I think comes from writing poetry because poetry has a rhythm to it and I feel like a lot of times like my prose structure has rhythm to it like if you read it a certain way and I think
yeah.
a lot of that comes from writing poetry has influenced like my prose and not so much the other way around. Like I feel like my poetry's influenced my prose hasn't really on my poetry, if that makes sense.
It does. It does.
Yeah.
As far as like writing style
Yeah.
and what
And
is
like
that?
diction
Is that
and flow and like all of that, I feel like is
syntax or
yeah, that's the word I was looking
I
for.
was trying to think of the fancy word, syntax. Well, see, that gives me another question that pops up into my mind is, have you ever written a piece of poetry and gotten feedback from it, and then pulled from that poetry to insert in your prose to try and uh, try and extract that feeling from the poetry into your prose? Say like you may have set up something. So you could be like, I'm going to put that in longer form prose writing. So have you ever done that
I
or
have
thought
with
about
some
that?
of them. It's obviously it wasn't horror stuff. I did like some more like emotional pieces, and then to me they come off as like prosatry. Like I don't know
Yeah.
how often
Okay.
that's thrown around anymore, but it used to be. But there are some.
Flowery language or
Yeah,
purple prose.
yeah.
So
But I did. There's some phrases that I've used in poems that I've written that I really liked. Like I don't know. There's like certain things I've written for that I've taken and incorporated as like descriptions and stuff in
yeah,
my prose pieces because I was like, oh, I really like that, and yeah, I've taken.
yeah. It's very cool to have those different facets in a writer to see how they almost use one and the other or blend. So it seems
Yeah,
like you have a great handle on it. Like, but that's cool. It makes me want to ask you, what are some of the authors that have inspired you in your writing? It could be poetry or prose.
hmm.
It could be, and it doesn't have to be horror. It could be any type of write, any book, anything like that.
I would say probably like older, like Oscar Wilde, John Keats. I really love their work, and
Yeah,
Oscar Wilde falls, I would say, in between poetry and horror, obviously. And I think, R.L. Stein from like growing up. Um, and more modern, I would say like Eric LaRocca's work. But
Yeah.
his work is, to me, his work is so poetic, and that's like one of the big reasons I love it. Like it's dark, it's disturbing in some ways and everything, but at the same time, it is so. To me, it reads like poetry, and I think that's one of the reasons I really, really love his work.
Yeah, that's cool. Um, that's always the cat.
Yeah, my other cat's in here now, so
Cats are like, what's up with all this
yeah.
shenanigans? And why aren't we on camera?
Oh, here he
Um,
comes. You're not even gonna probably see him. He's all black, so
oh yeah, like
there's a little bit.
it's just there.
Yeah.
The reason I asked that too, because like maybe not an influence on me, but have you ever read Ray Bradbury?
Yes.
Any of his work? It's super poetic, flowery, in almost, and it's just like short stories that he's writing
Mm-hmm.
and stuff. Like I've read short story collections of his, and like he's one of my favorite authors of all time, but also an influence, maybe not in writing style, but maybe ideas. Like I love his ideas of how he saw things, but that he he was almost too purpley for me, but um I got through a lot of his stuff and absolutely loved it. So that's, you said Oscar Wilde's like that. I don't think I've actually read any Oscar Wilde. So
It's very purple prose, very
yeah,
much. But I think too that was a lot of that time. Like a lot of the fiction and stuff from that time period was very flowery,
and is that
and then Oscar Wilde was very very eccentric and flowery with his
is that the
everything. So
is that the portrait of Dorian Gray?
yes, yep.
Okay,
And then
is
he's got
Dorian
he did plays and stuff too.
okay? So very cool. And then when you was explaining who your influences or inspirations were, you just lobbed up that softball for me, and I saw um, that today you got to meet R.L. Stein.
I did. I was
How was that?
it was awesome. It was
So
so cool. Uh,
yeah,
that was
uh,
one of my bucket list things because like he, like I said, and I'm sure like so many people that like especially my age and younger even, he's basically what got me into writing. His books are
yeah,
what or got me into writing, got me into reading, got me into like horror and everything. So I was like, if it weren't for him, I probably wouldn't have read as much as I read, and he was kind of the gateway to so many other horror books and horror authors. So yeah,
yeah,
it's
for
really really
sure.
cool.
I think anybody that grew up in the late '80s, early '90s, and had
Mm-hmm.
that Fear Street and Goosebumps
Yep.
influence, like that, those were the first books that piqued your interest, which is funny because it's all horror centric. It's funny, like that's the first thing that kids might typically gravitate toward is
Yeah.
the horror stories. So,
Let's say it was
um,
that the Goosebumps stuff, the Fear Street, and Animorphs were the big things I read. I was big into
I,
Animorphs too.
yep. Well, yeah, we're probably. I don't know. I don't remember how old you are. We're probably the same age bracket then, like within a few years. I'm 38, so
Yep. Yeah. I just turned 34, so
yeah.
yep.
Yeah, the Animorphs were right there on the shelves beside of Goosebumps. So
Yep.
I was more of the Goosebumps side, and I had a friend that was more of the Animorph side. So we had
I
that.
was gonna say I was more Goosebumps, and then when I read them all up to the point they were out, then I'd be taking Animorphs because that would be like what was left. So, but
Yeah,
I had oh my god, I had Goosebumps backpack. I was obsessed with the hamster from Monster Blood 2 that cuddles the hamster, and
yeah,
that I actually got today something signed. That's one of the things I got signed was the I met the artist too who did the cover art,
oh,
and
that's
that's the one I had to get because I was like that was the one I was obsessed with. But I had a shirt I used to wear like probably way more than I should have, like that didn't get washed with the
yeah,
hamster on it. All of my notebooks and my folders and Everything was Goosebumps I had when I was when I was little.
Yep, absolutely. I remember growing up with a Goosebumps comforter.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. Um, and then I somehow joined a Goosebumps mailing thing, and it was so weird because it was so sporadic, and they would mail you some. It was like a Goosebumps book club, is what it was.
Yeah.
So that was very cool.
Well, that was funny.
Um,
Like today, I was looking in the back of the one book I brought to be signed, and it was like all the books up to that point that you could order. If you didn't have them, you just sent the thing in the back of the book, and the books were like $2.95, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I can't remember when books were $2.95. You never see that anymore, and yeah,
oh,
miss those days.
that's one of my biggest regrets is not meeting R.L. Stein.
Mhm.
And he came to the West Virginia Book Festival, which is hosted about an hour and a half away from where I live at. And this was, I would say, going on 10 to 8, 7 years ago. So he showed up to the West Virginia Book Festival for one day on a Friday, but I went to the book festival on Saturday because at that time Joe Hill showed up to the West Virginia Book
Oh yeah.
Festival on Saturday, and I could only go to one day. So I went and actually met and had Joe Hill sign a few of my books that I
That's
had.
awesome.
So I got to meet Joe Hill, but I didn't get to meet R.L. Stein. It's
Joe Hill's on my list too. I haven't met him yet, so
so yeah.
yeah, it
I
was
have
the
a
same
picture.
thing. R.L. Stein. It was probably around that same time. He
Yeah,
was at New York Comic Con signing, and it was for a very short time, one of the days. But there was something. I think we had a panel or something that we had to go to that I couldn't make it, and I regretted it for so long because I'm like he wasn't really doing events in the area. And then when this went up, they had like limited tickets because like to keep them signings for like a short period of time. And I was like, I'm not missing out again because
yeah,
I was like, he's not here that often in the area. So yeah.
yeah. Absolutely. I mean, given given the opportunity, if it ever popped up for me in my area, I would absolutely be there to see
Mhm.
R.L. Stein. Um, we got a great question from Ian Galen. And it is, which is the favorite book of yours that you've written and why?
Oh my gosh, let me think.
Yeah, pick your favorite baby.
I know that's hard. I'll say I like them for different reasons. That's difficult.
I'll help you along. Which would you recommend for people that you feel would introduce them to your writing best?
Probably I it came upon Midnight Clear because I
It
feel
came,
like that one it's a novel, but the chapters kind of read like short stories, so you kind of get a feel of both types of my work in there,
yeah,
and it's heavy on a lot of the different like subgenres of horror that I like to write in. And it's very cat centric for everybody who likes cats. So that's I feel like there's a lot of me in there.
yeah, absolutely. Like, so once upon a midnight clear,
It came upon a midnight clear,
it came upon a midnight clear.
like
So
the Christmas song.
came upon a midnight clear.
All the chapters in there are named after holiday songs. So
Okay, there you go. You
yeah,
definitely pick up some fans with that one.
yeah.
There seems to be like people search out for holiday themed fiction. So
And then that one was actually last December was in the Advent box for Twisted Retreat,
yeah,
and it was a really cool edition that they released, and that cover had the cats on it, so that was exciting. So for anybody who picked that up and or who had the Advent box,
do you have a short story collection released? And if you do, tell the folks about that.
I do. I have two of them. Actually, I have three of them. I have Into the Uncanny and Return to the Uncanny, and they're just compilations of short stories that were published in literary magazines and anthologies. And when the rights came back, I just ended up collecting them. So
Yeah.
Into the Uncanny is like my earlier stuff. So like a lot of it was published like when I was in college. And then Return is a lot of my newer stuff. But personally, I like my collection Wicked Little Things. They're 100 word drabbles because I don't know, I like writing 100 word drabbles. They're very difficult to do, but once you do them, they're a lot of fun. Like
Yeah.
horror, little bite sized horror stories. Um,
How many
so it's
drabbles are make up that collection? Do you know off the top of your head?
it's I think it's like 100 and
Good
I feel
lord.
like 100. Yeah, there's a lot of them in there. There's a lot of them.
But
Maybe like
they're 100
130 or
words each.
something. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what a drabble is, folks. It is 100 words exact. Can't be 101, can't be 99.
Yeah.
So absolutely what Dorian said. Um, if you want to do some writing exercises, if you're a writer, write some drabbles because it's an economy of words when you get into drabbles. Tell a story in 100 words.
And honestly, I feel like it's really good. It's really good practice, not just for writing, but for editing,
Yeah,
because writing a drabble, you will not like you will realize how many words that you write that are unnecessary and you really don't need.
yeah,
So it's helped myself editing, but it's also helped like in writing and just like getting to the point with stories because like you only have 100 words and you basically have to drop the reader right in and tell a whole story in just 100 words. And yeah,
yeah.
it's a really good exercise for writing and editing. So yeah,
That,
they're fun.
I haven't written any drabbles in a very long time. But that's what the very first thing I ever had published was drabbles. So,
Nice.
um, I do tell people that still to this day though. I say if you wanna if you're up and coming writer or something, and or if you're having trouble with a story you're working on, I'll be like, go write some drabbles.
Yeah.
Like get the gears turning in a different on a different track, and it'll help with what you're working on now. But yeah, drabbles, man, and 100 and some of them. I mean, that's only what like a 10,000, 10,000, 12,000 K book, but
Yeah.
each one is its own unique story. So,
Yep.
I, my question to you is: have you ever cannibalized any of your drabbles?
So like expanded on them
Made
or
them into a much longer piece?
um yes. I'm actually
Yes.
working on one now that started as a drabble, then it ended up turning into a 500 word flash fiction, and then it ended up being a 1500 short thing. And now I was like, no, I think I can go farther with this. And
Yep.
yeah, so now it's going to be a like a novelette that I'm working on. So
Yep.
yeah,
See,
yep,
that's one of the things you yeah people might understand it and working with exercises, writing exercises like that is um you might be able to write that drabble and be 100 words, but um like you said, it'll if it's got there might be more to that story that just needs to be on simmer in your mind, so you could like write the drabble and then use that as a jumping off point and make it into a more fleshed out story. So
Mhm.
that drabble piece you might yeah that drabble that you write might act as a what is it an outline for something you work on, which is my next question. Look at that segue. Pantser, plotter, or hybrid of both?
I'm a hybrid. I feel
Hybrid.
like I plot the beginning, I plot the middle, I plot the end, and then everything that comes in between usually is just kind of like, oh, we'll see where this goes. However, the project I'm working on right now is like 100% plotted. That's the first project I think I've plotted like everything. So it's
Yeah.
very weird writing it that way because I'm like I like never plot outside of like I said the beginning, middle, and end. But yeah,
So when you say beginning, middle, and end, you have like plot points you want to hit in the beginning, middle, and end, and then you basically um, let let the keyboard take or let the story take you where it's going to go to get to A to B to C?
Pretty much. I mean, I feel like over time, like I plot a little more as I go, but like when I start out, I feel like I have a general idea of how I want a story to start. I'm trying to like think of my process. Like I feel like I always have the ending of a story first.
Right.
So I start with the ending and then I'm like, okay, well, how do I have to start this? And then usually like the conflict or like the big, the big stuff in the middle, like the meat of it, I think like I have plotted. Um and then the stuff in between is kind of just as I go,
Yeah.
like what comes to me and as I'm writing and kind of seeing where the story goes and filling it in to make it fit to the other little pieces that are down the road, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
But I
Um,
also feels like it goes depending on story because like some stories I plot more than others. So yeah.
Filthy plotter. I got you.
Yeah.
I consider myself a hybrid too, just to the extent of I usually have the seed of an idea that I write down, and then that'll be what everything for the story is structured around. It might be a scene, it might be a series of things that need to happen in the story, but um, I do not like any type of bullet point. I do not, or like beginning, middle, and end. I wouldn't write that down anywhere, but I would keep it in my mind
Mhm.
and always be trying to connect the dots. So I do consider myself a hybrid because even though I'm a pantser in the way I write, I don't actually, or yeah, in the way I write, I don't actually plot out anything, but I'm always thinking of what should be the next step in the story. So that's how I think the hybrid. That's why I started asking people because it used to be a lot more black and white with pantser or plotter, but the more I talk to people in these interviews and stuff, it seems like the hybrid is most people's processes.
Yeah.
Like however you go about that, whether you sit down and write a very loose outline and leave a lot of interpretation up for the pantsing part of it, or you have a much rigid outline, but then you might be knees deep in that writing that story, and then the story completely veers off from what you plotted out. So, does that do you find that ever happening to you? Like when you actually sit down and plot out almost a very in-depth outline, do you ever have trouble taming a story within that outline?
Um I think my last project I think was kind of falling into that. Like I had the whole thing pretty much like again, the beginning, middle, end, everything I needed to do plotted and then kind of just filling in everything. And my issue was towards the end, I felt like it was starting to like completely veer off from where I wanted it to go.
Yeah,
And I was like, no, you have to keep going this way because this is like what we planned. But that's kind of why I'm working on like my new work in progress is kind of what I was feeling in that last one, the where it wanted to go. So I'm kind of just like being like, all right, we'll let you do what you wanted to do. But yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
That sounds like the Drabble you was expanding on, and
hmm
it's growing and growing and growing. So
yep,
you're just along for the ride with that one. It sounds like.
yep,
Um, all right, that's always a fun question to see. That really gets into people's processes, and I always like hearing about how they go about it. The next question I have, and I know you say I mean, you're in the horror community, but you also are part of other writing communities. So, like, you do go back to in the beginning when you introduce yourself. What genres do you consider yourself an author in?
I don't know. Like I usually probably if people ask me, I usually just classify myself as like a dark fiction writer.
Dark fiction.
Because I write in horror, I write in like thriller. Um, I have written in like fantasy type, not like high fantasy or things like that, but like fantastical esque stuff. I haven't in a long time. I've written like historical fiction a long time ago, but I'm like the thing that kind of ties all of my stuff together is it has very dark elements to it, no matter what type. Aside from poetry, that's my that's my non-dark stuff. Um, so I usually classify myself as dark fiction to try like just at the baseline. Because that's pretty much across the board. I have dark elements in all my stuff.
Okay. So the question for you would be, what has been the biggest surprise for you after joining the horror community? But you can apply that to just a community in a broad sense. And that would be with your writing, reviewing, or otherwise, anything else.
Honestly, I think of all of the communities, the horror community is the tightest community I've been a part of.
Yeah.
And I like every time I go to conventions or every time I meet readers or anybody, like that seems to be the consensus that everybody's got is the support from the readers, from the writers. Everybody's very, very close and willing to help one another and be
Yeah.
supportive. And that's something that some of the other communities I've been a part of, and I don't know if it was just because I was younger at the time when I was doing it and like that was a little bit of it, but I feel like a lot of people were more like in it for themselves and not they really weren't a community. But I
Yeah.
found that like being part of the horror community is completely different because everybody is just so supportive of one another.
Yeah, I agree. You always hear some horror stories about, like, especially the romance
I
community
was just gonna
being
say the romance, especially
very
like the fantasy
cutthroat.
romance crossover these days. I'm like the drama I see online. I'm like I want to go there. Like oh my gosh, it's
Like, you wouldn't
awful.
think about it with all
No,
these, yeah. But
but that's what's so funny is because like trying to explain to people who don't read horror or don't understand and like they see horror and like oh that's scary like but I'm like yeah but the horror community are some of the sweetest nicest people like so even the authors I'm like there are so many people who write the most vile disgusting like horrendous things imaginable but
yeah,
they are like the sweetest people you would ever meet but
yeah,
then there's like other people in other communities that write like the complete opposite that I'm like they're people I wouldn't want to hang out with so
yeah,
yeah
vicious.
that's my biggest surprise I think is just seeing how nice everybody is too and
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because you do a lot of conventions,
mhm.
and I've seen you at quite a few too, and like being at these events, it's very amazing to finally get to speak face to face with a lot of these folks. Like you said, like, I mean, just a shout out, if you got to go to, like, Roland Bursey Jr.,
Yep.
Daniel Volpe, Aaron Beauregard, writing the grossest things imaginable,
Yes.
and especially, and well, and being the absolute sweetest and nicest people that you will ever meet in your life. Like,
Mhm.
yeah,
Yep.
especially Roland. Like,
Yeah,
Roland's just a joy to be around.
that was so fun because he was actually on. He worked on the Zombacon project with that I was on.
Royal.
Um, yeah, and it was so funny because my mom loved his chapter. She read the book. She loved the book, and we had a panel and everything. And like she met him afterward, and she was just like, he is the sweetest person. And she's like, I can't believe he wrote something so disgusting. And like,
Right?
it's so funny.
I think he loves it too. Like Roland,
Yeah.
like, I think he loves it. Like, he's the most non-assuming horror writer you will ever meet in your life. But
And that
yeah,
was like even because like Megan Stockton we talk
yep,
to all the time. And then my mom read Blue Jay, same thing. She's like, I can't believe that sweet person wrote that, you know. But it's fun.
Like Megan, she's so versatile in her writing, but
Yes.
um, probably she's been the author that's wrote the most. I don't know what she considers it, extreme or splatterpunk, but I think it's more extreme.
Mhm.
And she's probably my favorite author of that subgenre because I've read everything that she's put out in it. Like Blue Jay was my introduction to
Mhm.
her extreme writing, and then Impulse, and then uh, Pink Neon is it goes in and out of different genres. So yeah, like yeah, um, and then you meet Megan. She's just like
Yeah, complete opposite.
just this uh not unassuming woman that writes these gross terrible things. And also, if you ever have you ever done any of the gross out, like uh watched or listened to any of the gross out contests?
I have not, but that is my goal next year. My
So
problem is
yeah,
I'm so tired. I'm so tired half the time after everything that I like pass out before them. So that is
yes.
it is on my list of things to do.
So when she did it the first year, I just said, like I after she was done reading and she had the whole room maybe gagging and in stitches at the same time. And I said, Megan, why you write all those terrible things? When she got back to it. So that's been kind of an inside joke with me and her since then. Like, yes, that is the horror community in a nutshell. Is like just just very nice people writing the most horrible things you can imagine. So,
Yes.
um, I think too, why the community is like that because it's maybe people in their life kind of leaning into the reader side of things, why they like it so much too. I mean, every writer's a reader too, but like maybe you've lived your life and have read this stuff, and it's been almost taboo,
Mhm.
and you haven't really got to talk to people about it in your everyday life that's around you because they wouldn't quite understand or get it or why
Right.
you might like this stuff. So when you find this tribe, this community, it's like-minded weirdos who enjoy the same things. So
Mhm.
that I think that has a lot to do with it.
Yes.
So um, I'm going to check real quick and make sure we don't have any. We do have an added comment, and this is from Steve. I always butchered this guy, Steven. Oh, Baz Basillo. Please tell me if I got that right, Steven. Steven Basillo. He says he's got a point with disturbing authors are usually the nicest people, but I've worked with people doing comics that were so far up their own butts they could see daylight, yet couldn't write a script to save their lives. And then he comments, he said, "Just call me Steve." So yeah, like you get, I think that's a separate horror, or that's a separate community outside the horror community, and like you said, they might feel too high and mighty. Going off Steve's comment, he says they working with the comic people. So yeah, he said I was close on the pronunciation. I try. I'm very tired, Steve. Um, but yes, yeah, like I don't know. For we always say it, we're not competition. I think if you get authors that really believe that, those are the ones that really stand out to you. Like the
Mhm.
people that are there to support you and support everyone. and just, don't make it everything a competition, or try and try and take the fun out of it. Like, at least
Exactly.
have fun in the writing. Like, we're all doing the exact same thing.
And I
So
never understand, like, and again, that goes back to like the other communities too, like where people did treat each other as competitors here and there. And I'm like, but your connections with one another is like the most important thing you can have. Why would you ever want to like make yourselves be in competition? Like, I don't know. But that's one of the big things is too, like you said, the horror community. There are so many people that are so supportive and so uplifting, and just a few of them, like Cassandra, Celia, like all
yeah,
the time is out there championing for people. Um, it's all the time. I see so many people that they do. They're out promoting each other's work and talking about each other's work all the time. And that's why I love this group too, because like
yeah,
everybody, even the authors, are always talking about other people's work and not making it about themselves. And
right.
you know, that's the
Yeah,
best thing that I honestly, yeah.
that yeah, that stands out. Like, people
Yeah.
notice. So, um, okay, Steven. He says maybe he'll get on one day to talk. I will reach out to you when I have availability. Um, but so I think we have hit most of what I usually ask people. But what are some upcoming events people can find you at?
Well, let me think. I've got a bunch of them coming up. Um, some of them are like super super local, so I'm gonna look at the bigger book related events.
What tell the people what area you're in? Is it Buffalo?
No, I'm in like between the Hudson Valley and Capital Region in New York.
Okay.
So I do most of my events are like Hudson Valley Capital Region. Um, I I'm gonna be at TerrorCon. That's in Marlborough, Massachusetts in September. Killer Pride in Williamsburg, Virginia. That's where AuthorCon usually is from Scares That Care. It's their Pride event. That's the end of September. I'm trying to think what else. I think those are my like two really big ones,
Are you
and
going
then
to do
I've
TBR
got a few
con?
ones. Which one?
TBR con?
Not this year because I've got I'm not signing there, but Silver Scream Con in Massachusetts, the Iceland Kills the band puts on, and
Yeah.
it's like a huge horror thing. So I go to that every year. I was like, they got Matthew Lillard this year, so and Skeet,
Oh,
so I'm like, I can't miss that. That's my thing this
yeah.
year.
Technically the original Ghostface, because
Yeah,
they were both Ghostface. So,
and I met Skeet last year there, and they didn't have Matthew Lillard, but now they're both there, so I'm like, well, I have to go.
right.
Because I got to get
Definitely.
that picture. Like everybody knows what I'm talking about of both of them. So yeah,
All right. So if anybody wanted to, he says you'll be up the road. Steve says you'll be up the road from me in Marlboro.
nice.
So,
I like that area.
um,
And then usually in October, I don't know the weekend yet, but all of my social media and stuff I always post. I usually always have a signing around Halloween in Salem, Massachusetts, at Silver Moon Comics. So if anybody's brave enough to go to Salem during October, the crazy time, I
right.
will be there at one point. So yeah.
So aside from that, what can you tell people, if any, that you're working on, and what they can expect next from you in publication?
Probably next, I've got a novelette that I'm working on. It's an expansion of that Drabble I was talking about earlier. This is what I'm working on. Um, Basically, in a nutshell, it's about this couple who ends up finding a cat that shows up on their doorstep, and it's uh, basically like a harbinger of like the apocalypse and whatever. Like, I don't know. It's crazy. There's a lot of crazy stuff in it, but it's fun and it's got cats in it. So
Absolutely.
And then my longer project that I'm working on slowly is it's very heavy in grief. This one's not so much horror. It's more like just dark, but it's like coming of age story. And going full circle, it takes place in the Pacific Northwest because I was saying that's where I love to go.
Yeah.
Um, and it's I don't know. I feel like it's fun. This is the one I've like completely plotted out. But it's very, very coming of age, very, very grief heavy. So it's taken me a while to write it because it's very emotional, digging into like deep places. But that poetry stuff helps with that. So
Coming of age, grief, horror
yeah,
is
yeah,
just hitting all the feels.
yeah. So that's what I'm
So,
working on.
okay. Aside from that, let everybody know where they can find your books and what your social medias are,
Okay.
so they can follow you.
So my stuff is obviously it's on Amazon. I think Barnes and Noble website there's stuff. I've seen it on like Kobo, Smashwords has it, pretty much like everywhere. There's some bookstores that carry it, but I don't know where they all are. But I know they've ordered them. And my social media is basically just my name, my first name dot my last name. And I'm on Blue Sky. I still have my Twitter account up, X, whatever you want to call it, but I don't use it very often anymore. I have TikTok. That's my first name dot my middle initial dot my last name. I have Instagram. I have Facebook. I'm like everywhere. If you
Everywhere.
search my name,
Search
there's
your
there's
name.
nobody else. Yeah, I'll say there's nobody else with my name out there, so you'll find me.
Well, for my embarrassment, if I think it was just my wife who corrected me, but I always, I guess it's because it's Judith, but I always thought your name was Sonnet as well. And I was like, there's two sonnets in the horror community. And then I think she was like, there's an I. I'm like, and then I went and looked. I'm like, you're wrong. I went and looked. There's an I. So it is Sinnott. So yes.
Yeah.
So um, that's my embarrassment. That's
So I was
that's the
really,
only
really
time I'm
excited
ever going
because
to admit.
Barnes and Noble Annapolis had one of my books in stock, and it was next to Judith's book. So I was like,
Yeah.
that's really cool because I'm glad we have similar close names because I was like, look, my book's next to Judith's, and that's like the best honor. So
I also have two T's. So
yes, yep,
that's another differentiator.
yep.
All right. So if there isn't anything else, I don't think so for people. But Dorian, it was an absolute pleasure having you on. I
Thank you
guess
so
I
much.
will see you at Killer Pride.
Yes, you will see me
Vic
there.
and Jess are going to attend. We're not going to vend or nothing, but we're going to come out and support the event and Scares of Care. So
Awesome.
everyone in the area at the end of September, come out and see Dorian at Killer Pride, Scares of Care. Um, if you ever want to come back on, say you have a new release, just reach out to me and I will be absolutely happy to have you back on.
Awesome. Thank you. I will let you know.
And thank you all for watching, and we'll do it again next time.
Thank you.